Okay. Well, I'm here with Emily Squires and Laura Dean, who work for the Minnesota Food Association. And it's just an opportunity to talk a little bit about this recent event that they had last month. And so we're here just to talk about that. And as people that do on-farm events and are event organizers, just learn from their experience. And so I'd like to welcome you both. Thanks for coming to talk with me about this.
Thanks. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah. So maybe we'll just start if you just want to tell us a little bit about your event, and maybe kind of why did you do an on-farm event in the first place, and maybe even a little bit about the Minnesota Food Association as well while we're at it.
Okay. Well, the Minnesota Food Association is we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are located on a farm, and we have a farmer training program. So over the past several years, we've done a couple on-farm events every year. So people have sort of come to expect that there's going to be at least an open house in the summer and harvest party in the fall. So that's why we did this event as one of our normal events. And we invite the farmers, we're a big part of it, their families, our CSA members, other people who know us, as MFA and that work that we do. Up the flyer. Yeah. She's going to put up the flyer that we use that will tell a little bit more about what we did during the event.
Sure.
Screen. Mm-hmm. Can you see that?
Yep.
You can see that, right? Okay. So we did it a Sunday afternoon, evening type of an event. And so we got a band to play. We had a bonfire. We had pumpkins for sale and a market stand. We had some kids activities. So we had crop art and a wagon ride because people really love the wagon rides. We had a potluck. We had some food and beer donated as well. We had a caramel apple bar, which was a big hit. That was one of our fundraising events. And then we also had like a graduation ceremony for our farmers at the end of the event. So it was a really full night. We had stuff going on the whole time from 4 to 7.
So it isn't primarily, it really just sounds like for your organization, a general kind of celebration at the end of the season. There's a lot of reasons to have it. It isn't just strictly a fundraising event. It isn't just there's certain objectives you have in terms of running this. It's just a combination of all of them or what?
I think so. I mean, I think that it's sort of a fundraising event, but our fundraising goal is essentially just to break even because events cost a lot to put on, and it takes a lot of like Emily and my time and the rest of the staff's time too for the actual day of, and some of like the cleaning up the barn. Like there's a lot of time and money that goes into it. So our goal was to break even on our events this year, and we did.
On our events, on both events combined. Yeah, we made a little money.
We made a little bit. Not very much, but a little bit.
Sure.
But it's definitely helpful, and especially like we're a nonprofit organization, and so I feel like building that relationship between our supporters and like the physical space that we have here. I think a lot of people come to the farm and they're like, oh, I had no idea that this is what you were doing, until they actually get to the farm and see it and actually get to meet farmers. And we're working with immigrant minority farmers, and so they're really comfortable at the farm. It's their farm, and so like just having an opportunity for people to meet their farmer, I think, is really valuable for a lot of our CSA customers and other supporters. Since we're a nonprofit, we just have like general like community partners and other people that we work with and that support us. So I think it builds our support network, even if it's not people giving money that night. It's at least building the relationship and that point of connection so that they remember our organization and our farm and our farmers, and hopefully in the future will give us more money.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it does sound like that maybe the top priorities, like, creating that relationship, maybe the major thing. That's certainly the case with our own. We do a fall harvest party for our own CSA members for my own operation. It's the primary reason we do it, to kind of strengthen that connection. So it's, I think maybe a lot of farm operators doing on-farm events probably have a similar kind of objective, right? So, so overall, how do you think it went? I mean, you just did this a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago. What went well? What could have been a little better? What do you think?
We're really happy with how it went. This is Emily and I's first year working on the event together, and I feel like we were a good event coordination team. And we got a really good turnout. I think we had about 300 people show up, which was great in our opinion. It was, I think, more than what we had last year, so that was good. And like I said, we pretty much broke even, so like it wasn't a huge money suck, and I feel like we were pretty close on budgeting everything, and we had a lot of, Emily mentioned a lot of the activities, and I think they were all really well received. We had a lot of families come this year, so it's interesting. I've been at MFA for a few years now, and last year I felt like it was people stayed a little later and they drank a little bit more beer and wine, and versus this year people kind of came with their kids and they came for those kids activities and they kind of went home early. So it's interesting to see how it changed, but I think it was successful with the activities that we were offering. The weather
activities and such new this year, was that we trying to have more families this year, or that just kind of the way it worked out?
I don't know why that happened. I mean, we did have kids activities last year as well, but maybe they were better this year. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, we did have like a chicken thing last year. But this year we did like the do-it-yourself crop art, and everybody always likes the wagon rides. So I'm not sure like why that changed exactly. We didn't totally figure that out, but yeah, so I think really successful overall. And like I was going to say, the weather really cooperated. It was like a beautiful sunny afternoon, and in the middle of October, that can be not guaranteed. So I'm really happy that the weather cooperated. A couple people mentioned being a little bit chilly, but I mean, it was really good weather overall. So that was great. And then, I mean, there's always areas that we could improve. I don't know if you want me to go into that quite yet. Sure. But we rely on, so like as I said, like this is definitely a event that we want to try to establish relationships and maybe funders in the future. And we didn't do a very good job of getting people to sign in or collecting people's contact info. And so we don't really know who came necessarily. I mean, other than just our chances talking with people who were there. We did have a volunteer that was at a welcome table, but I think a lot of people kind of bypassed the welcome table, and I don't think she was really tracking people down. And so we're not totally sure, for one, like missing that opportunity. I think we missed out on how people heard about it. So like what out of our publicity strategies really worked, and also like who was there? Like, was it mostly CSA members, or was it mostly just like people that read it in the newspaper? And so that would have been helpful. And I think we had just some like logistical things. Like I had a grill, we were grilling some brats and chicken. And we didn't really, Emily and I aren't big grillers. I rely on my brother and dad to do that for me. And so I had thrown away a piece of the grill that like shielded the fire from like overheating the meat. And so like it was kind of problem solving last minute with some of the grill, and like the meat ended up being ready a lot later than we had hoped it would. I think it actually worked out okay, because then it wasn't all just eaten up right away. So we staggered the meat just because of the grilling issue. And then we definitely could have had more volunteer help. I think we had a lot of activities going on, and more, I think, than years previous, and tried to get some more volunteers, but made the best with what we had. But Emily and I ended up like filling in whenever there was like a volunteer leaving. Like she staffed the caramel apple bar for a while, and like I was like dumping trash cans and like kind of just filling in wherever, which is okay. But then we lost out on some of the like I didn't get to network with people that came and like really talk to people and thank them for coming. And so that would have been nice to have some more volunteer help, I think.
So break that down a little bit. I mean, did you have, say 6 activities at once, and you had 4 volunteers total, or what did that look like? How many, was it you two and a couple of other volunteers, or what?
Yeah. So,
well, it was all the staff. So we have 5 people on staff, and the 3 other staff had a dedicated job they were doing. And then we had a couple of board members. I think we had a total of like 4 or 5 other volunteers. But it was a 3-hour event. And so we allowed people to sign up for like shifts, 1.5-hour shifts, because we wanted them to enjoy the event too. So I think if we would have made people do their activity the whole time, we would have had enough, but we only made them do it half the time. So I think it's really important as the person who's coordinating the event to not give yourself a specific job to do, so that you can kind of be managing and overseeing and building those relationships. That's really important.
Yeah, somebody was managing the grill essentially the whole time. That was like a all the time job.
Yeah.
And he also helped set up signage beforehand, and he helped clean up afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had another woman who also helped set up a little bit, and she staffed the caramel apple bar for the first half of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a raffle and a wine pull, which are two of our fundraisers. And so we had people staffing those tables. We had a board member at the welcome table, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
And then, staff was doing, one of our farm director was doing like wagon rides most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then
A staff person at the market table where we're selling produce.
Yeah. So, and then our executive director was emceeing the evening,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a graduation ceremony, so I had to speak in the graduation ceremony and give out awards. So everybody was kind of doing a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
things. There was a lot of people involved, and we still could have had more help just because of the amount of activities. But
Great. And anything else in reflecting on the event? What places to improve? Other things that you thought in terms of it worked well? Maybe there's a specific activity that worked kind of well, or that didn't work kind of well? Or?
Yeah.
Well, I think like the caramel apple bar was really fun. I think engaging people in like a fun novelty item like that, that was a fundraiser for us too. That went really well.
Mm-hmm.
The electricity, something that went well is that we have, like limited electricity in our barn. And so we had to really think ahead of time. And what's Sing's title?
He's a caretaker.
Our caretaker helped us think through that. And that actually ended up going really well because, if you like blow a circuit there, then you're not going to have hot coffee, or you're not going to have the lights in the band, they all needed electricity. So we were really happy because at our previous event, we had some electrical issues. So that's something that's worth your time.
Well, to make it better, for every harvest party I've ever hosted in my barn, we've always blown a fuse. So I need your caretaker, I think.
Yeah, we had I think it was 3 different power sources with extension cords going into the barn.
Yeah, that was a big success.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely our potluck line and the way we were funneling people through our barn to get their food was, we thought it was organized, and then the way people put themselves in the line, it ended up being a problem, and we had to do some problem solving. We didn't think ahead of time, make sure there's space to have, a line on both sides of the table to cut the line in half. And then because of the Washington County regulations on potlucks versus food service, we had to separate any food MFA was offering from any of the potluck food. And we can talk about that later, but that created this weird way that we had to divide up the food. And, everybody got enough food and it ended up being okay, but it was just really awkward. We should... place for improvement.
Yeah, so that hits on one of these things that flow through the site you're talking about. Might have been an issue you could have planned a little better on. Is the other things that you wish you had planned a little bit better on, or spent a little more time planning about?
I think we did
I think we planned. Emily and I had every other week meetings since July or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we just checked in and kind of divided up work that needed to be done. So I feel like we were pretty well organized. I feel like Emily was going to say, some of the food safety concerns, we planned for them, and there was still a few issues that came up, but that took a lot of time, and I'm happy that we planned that far ahead as we did. I think I don't know. I think we did our best though. I feel pretty happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Great. So you mentioned the thing about regulations. There's some regulations here around potlucks versus what you're serving. That's always a big issue with kind of all events. I think it's especially an issue with on-farm events. We have liability issues around animals, some possibly dangerous equipment that maybe other events don't deal with that's sitting around. So these liability issues and these regulatory issues. I also throw in there insurance, these kinds of things seem to loom pretty large. You touched a little bit there about your dealings with Washington County, I assume public health or something. What other issues, did you have any other issues like that, or you want to talk a little bit more about the public health permitting or regulations and how you dealt with those?
Yeah, well, because MFA, because we're a nonprofit, we already carry, I think, the types of insurance that are required. So for this particular event, we didn't have to look into insurance issues. We did have to get a day of liquor license. So I went ahead and contacted our township early on in the process to make sure, because, you know, those things take a couple weeks to come through sometimes. So we were talking about this, and our advice to anyone doing this is start planning early enough in advance and make your outline of what kind of food you want to have, where you're going to have the food, how long your event is going to be, because there's certain regulations if events are over 4 hours or under 4 hours. And then one of the first things you should do is contact whatever area you're in, whoever's going to be doing your special event inspection, and get them involved in the process, because chances are you'll have to change your plans or get really creative and think about how you're actually going to pull off what you want to do. And to see those people as a resource and not as a barrier to what your goals are, but to really you have to be super dedicated to go into the details of what's required, and do not assume that they're going to miss anything, or that if some area is fuzzy that it's going to be okay. I mean, everyone's goal is to keep everyone who comes safe, and that's their goal. That's, whoever's holding this event's goal. So get on the phone with them early on is probably the best suggestion. I mean, things we wouldn't even think about, but that's outlined in the application that they would give you. Water at a public event can't be from a residential well. Well, we're not a residential site, but I checked with our farm director, and our water is from a residential well. So we had to bring in water from an approved public source for our hand washing stations and for people to drink. So there's a lot of details that you have to get squared away ahead of time. You can't prepare food on site unless you have a commercial kitchen. So you need to build relationships with community. We used a local church, and they were able to let us use their kitchen to do stuff. But we had to plan to go to the church well in advance of the event to wash the apples for the caramel apple bar, because it had to be that approved water and had to be in a commercial kitchen. So start early and call them often. And yeah.
We also said to allow a little bit of money to spend. We had to, what did we spend money on? We had to buy
chafing dishes
so that we're able to, we did grilling. And so in order to make sure that the meat was staying hot, we got some chafing dishes, just disposable ones. So it wasn't that much money, but we were on a tight budget. So we still wanted to incorporate it into the budget. I don't know.
If you don't have a hand washing station already on your site, you'll have to invest in one. And they have suggestions of good cheapo ways to do it for probably under $20, but you will have to have hand washing if you're doing any food service.
And we had to have two, and that was something that came up at the inspection.
Yeah.
We had one, and then they were like, "Oh, you need another one," because we had we had caramel apples and the grill, and so we needed to have two separate hand washing stations so that they were right next to each of those volunteers that were doing those projects. And so I ran across the farm and grabbed the other hand washing station, which, at least we had another one easily accessible. But yeah.
And the rules are on potlucks.
Timeline. I mean, with your person from public health, you may have contacted them 6 months before the event, and
well, no, because we were finishing up our open house in July, and this event was October, so it was probably 3.5 months in advance. But we did have to make some significant changes after that first contact, because we wanted to have a potluck, because that's what we've traditionally done, and we wanted that community feel. But we also wanted to be able to provide meat, and we ended up providing the cake and beverages as well, because we wanted to feel like people were getting something, when they came. So there's rules about fundraising, you can't fundraise in any at least in Washington County, in association with the potluck. You can't have a donation bucket next to the potluck food. You can if you're doing food service, say, and we had gotten beer donated. We could say, suggested donation $3 for a beer. And it has to be clearly separated by space. What was the potluck? What wasn't the potluck? So that affected our flow, in our logistics, like we talked about earlier. So 3.5 months was enough time for us, but I spent a lot of hours doing it. So if you're someone who has your own farm, and you're full-time farming, you need to take that into consideration. Yeah.
Great. Anything
and if
else
we
on
would
that?
have done a pure
Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I was going to say if we would have done a pure potluck, I think it would have been a little simpler.
Yeah.
But we wanted to provide something to the people that were coming, and so that was kind of a decision that we made.
And our fundraising event, the Caramel Apple Bar, was food service, so we would have had to set that aside too. So
great. Have you always had a band at these your events? So you had a band this year.
Yeah, pretty much always. Last year we had, instead of a band, we had just played music over some speakers. One of our board members has a PA system, which is really nice. We had since we work with multicultural farmers, we had a traditional Karen dance group come and do this bamboo dance last year. So we paid them, but we always have a little bit of money budgeted to pay entertainment because it just makes it more festive. Everybody likes it when there's a band or some kind of live entertainment. We didn't want to cut that. Definitely cuts into it's always like a give or take, like, well, are we going to provide more meat or like better quality meat, or are we going to do more music? And so and I also, I manage our training program, and so I got to take a little bit of money out of my training program budget since it was both a farmer party and a community party, and so I don't know, I had a little bit more room than we would have had, but yeah, band, definitely. I mean, it was just great to have live music.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so we definitely have some food. We've got some music. We have some activities. What do you think? There's a lot of excitement around on-farm events. Maybe I would think more so than there was 5 years ago. Certainly, there have been on-farm events for a long time. But what are the elements? What are these things that are really attracting people to on-farm events? Is a certain activity? Is a certain community feel? Is there some? What is it about on-farm events that make them popular now today in a way maybe they weren't in the past?
Well, we were thinking about this a little bit because I think it's kind of hard to say, but I don't know. I guess I don't know like the past versus today, but I just definitely think, especially this event, it's like a seasonal, like fun fall day and like some fun free activity that you can do with your family and get outside. I mean, I definitely think that there's momentum building in like the local foods movement in general. And so I think like people's general awareness of like what is local food or why is it important, or like being interested in who their farmer is probably gotten more popular in recent years. But I don't know, just the seasonality of it. I think it was like a beautiful fall day. Like we're in really close to the Stillwater area, and there was the same day on my commute here, I drove past a winery, and they were having this, like, their parking lot was like full of cars, and they have an apple orchard as well. And like we passed another little farm stand, and they had like a full parking lot, and like you saw like these signs up for like other like little fun fall events everywhere. So I just feel like it's a very timely event that like everyone just wants to like go out and do fall things. So I think that helps a little bit, but I don't know. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think that's all true.
Great. So, maybe the final question to kind of sum it up, if you're advising a farm operator looking to do an on-farm event, or another organization like yours, or a nonprofit organization, it might be, or another organizer who's looking to do an on-farm event, what kind of advice you give them? You've done a number of these, and one's fresh in your mind. So what do you say?
I think start early and know that it's going to cost you some money and some time. But in our experience, it's been a really valuable way to engage your constituents, whoever you want to be building relationships with. And you may not make a lot of money off of it, the event itself, but I think you should go for it and just know it's going to take some investment ahead of time.
And I think to have a good budget, like have it established, like this is how much I'm going to spend on this event, and not like try to really we really stuck to our budgets. Yeah. And I think that helped. Otherwise, I think it could get really out of control. Like there's a lot of things I would have loved to spend way more money on, but we didn't because we were stuck to a budget. And I think capitalizing on what you have. Yeah. So like if you have a wagon, do some wagon rides, or like, I don't know, just trying to think about like what do people love about, like we have chickens, so it's like, I don't know.
Or we had a bunch of leftover seeds So we did, that's how we did the crop art. We just got some Elmer's glue and printed out some pages and had the kids do crop art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think keeping it as simple as you need to be able to pull it off. Like, I think we probably maxed out what we would have been able to do. I don't think we would have been able to do any more than what we did. So that's why I think we're happy with it too. Like 300 people, it was a great number. Like if it would have been 500, I think it would have been too many. Or like the number of activities and like the number of volunteers that we had to manage and like the amount of time out of our lives that we're dedicating to planning this event. So I think just like we actually started off in our planning with like a way longer list of activities and ideas for like how could we make money or like how could we make this event really cool. We were going to do like a salsa tasting competition
and pony rides.
So we cut back a lot of things just because we realized into the process that like we had to focus on a few events just because of our capacity. So.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for the time, kind of your great advice to others doing this kind of work. I'm going to stop this tape now. I wish you guys the best and probably in new events coming next year.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.